"Why did I settle for you?" she asked, staring at my best friend. "So I ended our engagement immediately. He chose his loyalty to me, she became the town gossip, and I dodged the biggest bullet." Sometimes the most brutal questions reveal truths you never wanted to face. And sometimes those truths save your entire future. This is the story of how my fiancé's moment of drunken honesty became the best thing that ever happened to me. 3 years with Samantha felt like building something solid in our small Tennessee town where everyone knows everyone and word travels faster than gossip at Sunday service. I'm Connor, 29, high school history teacher at Franklin County High, the kind of guy who shows up early, stays late grading papers, and genuinely believes education can change lives even when the pay suggests otherwise. Samantha managed the local First National branch downtown, sharp as a tack with numbers and ambitious enough to have her eye on the regional manager position that would open up next year. I'd always been her biggest supporter, picking up dinner on her late nights, listening to her strategize about difficult clients, even helping her practice presentations in our living room while she paced around in her business heels. When I proposed 6 months ago with my grandmother's antique solitaire at Miller's Lake where we'd had our first real conversation about the future, her yes felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I can't believe this is really happening," she'd whispered against my neck that night, tears mixing with lake spray as we sat on the old wooden dock. "I've been planning this moment since our second date," I told her, and it was true. I'm a planner by nature, the type who researches engagement rings for months and scouts the perfect location 3 times before the actual proposal. Our spring wedding was already taking shape, venue booked at the historic Magnolia Gardens, her dress ordered from a boutique in Nashville, and my college buddy Tyler had agreed to be my best man after moving to town 6 months earlier to start his construction business. Life felt perfectly aligned, like those rare moments in teaching when every student suddenly understands the lesson and you remember why you chose this profession in the first place. Tyler's arrival had actually strengthened my sense of security. Having my best friend from University of Tennessee nearby felt like the final piece clicking into place for the life I'd always envisioned. "This is exactly what I always pictured," I told Samantha one evening as we planned seating charts, watching her organize everything with the same precision she brought to loan applications, building something real in a place that matters, surrounded by people who actually care about us. She'd smiled and kissed my cheek, but looking back now, I wonder if that smile reached her eyes or if I was just seeing what I wanted to see. Tyler's construction business exploded faster than anyone expected, including Tyler himself. Within 3 months of opening Mackenzie Construction, he'd landed the courthouse restoration project that had been sitting in bureaucratic limbo for 2 years, plus contracts for custom homes in the wealthy Riverside development where Nashville commuters built their dream retreats. The guy had this natural charisma that made contractors want to work with him and clients trust him with their biggest investments. He'd walk onto a job site and somehow convince everyone they were building something special together, not just another project. Tyler signed another custom build today, Samantha announced over dinner one Tuesday, setting down her fork with the kind of excitement usually reserved for her own work victories. The Hendersons are letting him design their entire kitchen renovation from scratch. Can you imagine having that kind of creative control over a 6-figure project? I looked up from the stack of essays I was grading, trying to match her enthusiasm. That's great for him. Tyler always was good with people. Good with people? She laughed, but there was something different in the sound. "Connor, he's not just good with people. He's building an empire. Do you know he's already talking about expanding into commercial properties?" She gestured vaguely at my papers. "Grading the same essays about the Civil War that you graded last year." The comment stung more than it should have, probably because there was truth in it. "Teaching's important work too," I said quietly. "Of course it is," she backtracked quickly, "but some people just have that drive to build something bigger, you know?" Tyler sees opportunities where other people see problems. Over the following weeks, Tyler's name became a regular fixture in our dinner conversations. Tyler got approved for that downtown office renovation. Tyler hired his 5th full-time employee. Tyler's thinking about buying that property on Main Street. Each update delivered with increasing animation, her voice taking on this bright, admiring quality that I'd never heard when she talked about my work. I started noticing how she'd check her phone during our conversations, supposedly for work emails, but I caught Tyler's name in her notifications more than once. "We should invite Tyler to the Miller's barbecue this weekend," she suggested one evening while we planned our usual social rounds. "He's been working so hard, and he doesn't know many people outside of work yet." We'd been including Tyler in more gatherings lately, the three of us at Murphy's Tavern for trivia night, weekend cookouts, even a double date with her coworker Lisa and her boyfriend. Tyler was always gracious and funny, the kind of guy who remembered details about people's lives and asked follow-up questions that made them feel heard. But I was starting to notice something else in those moments: how Samantha positioned herself to face Tyler during conversations, how her laugh got a little louder when he told stories, how she'd find excuses to touch his arm or shoulder during casual interactions. "You're lucky to have such a loyal friend," she'd tell me after these gatherings, but increasingly, I wondered if loyalty was what she was thinking about when she looked at him. The comparison started subtle but grew sharper each week, like paper cuts that don't hurt until you notice you're bleeding. "Tyler took another huge risk today," Samantha announced over dinner, scrolling through her phone instead of looking at me. "He bid on that warehouse conversion project downtown, even though it's twice the size of anything he's done before. That's what separates successful people from everyone else. They're not afraid to bet on themselves." I set down my fork, recognizing the underlying message. "Are you saying I don't bet on myself?" "I'm saying you chose the safest possible career path and then wondered why you're not building wealth like Tyler is." Her tone was matter-of-fact, like she was explaining loan terms to a customer. "Connor, when's the last time you took a real risk? When's the last time you pursued an opportunity that scared you?" The question hung in the air because we both knew the answer. Teaching had always felt like my calling, not a backup plan, but explaining that to someone increasingly obsessed with financial success felt pointless. "Some people create security through stability," I said. "And some people create security by going after what they actually want instead of settling for what feels comfortable." The word, settling, hit like a slap. Over the next few weeks, her critiques became a regular feature of our conversations. Why hadn't I considered starting a tutoring business? Why didn't I pursue administrative roles that paid better? Why was I content with the same position year after year while Tyler was building something meaningful? "Tyler doesn't let fear hold him back," became her favorite refrain, delivered with the kind of reverent admiration usually reserved for war heroes or saints. The Franklin County Fall Festival brought everything into sharp focus. We'd gone as a trio, Samantha, Tyler, and me, wandering through craft booths and food trucks like we had all summer. But something was different that day. Samantha positioned herself between Tyler and me as we walked, laughing too loudly at his stories about difficult clients and resting her hand on his forearm whenever she wanted to emphasize a point. "Tyler, you're absolutely hilarious," she giggled after he made a mild joke about small-town politics, her fingers lingering on his bicep longer than casual contact required. I watched Tyler's smile become strained, his eyes flicking to me with obvious discomfort, but Samantha seemed oblivious to his signals. When he excused himself to buy funnel cake, she followed him to the booth, standing close enough that other people had to step around them. "She's really friendly today," observed Mrs. Patterson, my former English teacher, with the raised eyebrow that meant she'd noticed exactly what I was seeing. That evening, after Tyler had politely escaped to check on a job site, I finally confronted her. "Samantha, what was that about today? The way you were acting with Tyler?" She turned from the bathroom mirror where she was removing her makeup, expression shifting to defensive irritation. "What do you mean, the way I was acting? I was being friendly to your best friend. Isn't that what you want?" Friendly doesn't involve hanging on his arm all afternoon or following him around like a teenager with a crush. "Oh my God, Connor, you're being ridiculous. Tyler's naturally charming, and I enjoy his company. That doesn't mean anything inappropriate is happening." The gaslighting was smooth and immediate. I didn't say anything inappropriate was happening. I said your behavior was obvious enough that other people noticed. Maybe other people noticed because you're acting insecure and jealous, and it's making everyone uncomfortable. She turned back to the mirror, dismissing me with body language. "Tyler's successful and confident, and apparently that threatens you." From that point forward, Our social calendar revolved increasingly around Tyler's availability. Samantha suggested dinners when she knew he'd be free, planned weekend activities that included him, even invited him to intimate gatherings that had previously been just for us. "Let's have Tyler over for dinner Sunday," she'd suggest. "I want to cook for him. He's been working so hard, and I bet he misses home-cooked meals." Meanwhile, Tyler began exhibiting clear signs of discomfort with her attention. I noticed him creating physical distance during conversations, redirecting overly personal questions back to work topics, and making subtle efforts to include me when Samantha monopolized his time. "Your girl's been texting me a lot lately," he mentioned casually one afternoon while we grabbed coffee before his next appointment. "Work stuff mostly, asking about projects and business advice." The way he said it suggested the texts weren't purely professional, but he was too loyal to elaborate. "Thanks for being patient with her," I said. "She's going through something lately." Tyler nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Just be careful, man. Sometimes people get ideas." I should have pressed him for details, should have demanded to know exactly what Samantha was saying in those texts, but part of me was afraid to hear the answer. The breaking point came during what should have been a perfect evening, our annual backyard barbecue that we'd been hosting since moving in together. I'd spent the afternoon preparing my grandmother's famous potato salad and setting up string lights while Samantha arranged flowers and chilled wine, the kind of domestic teamwork that used to make me feel grateful for our partnership. 23 people showed up, including Tyler, several teacher colleagues, Samantha's coworkers from the bank, and neighbors who'd become genuine friends over the years. For the first hour, everything felt normal: good food, easy conversation, the satisfied feeling of bringing people together in our space. Then Samantha opened her third bottle of Chardonnay. I watched her transformation happen in real time. The polite hostess who'd been circulating among guests suddenly became laser-focused on Tyler, abandoning conversations mid-sentence to intercept him whenever he moved. "Tyler, come sit by me," she called out when he was talking to my fellow teacher Mike about potential classroom renovations. "I want to hear more about that mansion you're building in Riverside." She patted the spot next to her on our porch swing with the kind of obvious invitation that made Mike raise his eyebrows and quietly excuse himself. From across the deck, I watched her lean into Tyler's personal space as he politely described the custom home project, her hand finding reasons to touch his shoulder, his knee, his forearm whenever she laughed at his responses. "Samantha," I called out, hoping to redirect her attention. "Can you help me with the dessert plates?" She waved me off without looking away from Tyler. "In a minute, honey. Tyler's telling me about this incredible stone fireplace he's designing." But Tyler wasn't describing fireplaces, he was trying to include other people in the conversation while subtly shifting away from her increasingly bold physical contact. I saw him glance toward me with an expression that mixed apology and helplessness, clearly uncomfortable but too polite to make a scene at our party. "You know what, Tyler," Samantha continued, her voice getting louder and more animated, "you should come look at our kitchen renovation ideas. I've been thinking we need someone with real vision to help us maximize the space." She stood up unsteadily, tugging on his arm. "Connor's not much of a visionary when it comes to home improvement." The casual dismissal of my input in front of our guests stung, but what happened next was worse. When Tyler excused himself to help me with grilling duties, clearly trying to escape her attention, she followed him to the far end of the deck where I was flipping burgers. "God, Tyler, look at those arms," I heard her say, supposedly quiet but loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "All that physical labor is really working for you. I bet you could just pick me up and—" Her sentence trailed off into giggling, but the implication hung in the air like smoke from the grill. Tyler's face went red as he mumbled something about checking on the chicken and moved to help other guests, but Samantha wasn't finished. "Connor's gotten so soft lately," she continued, apparently unaware that her voice was carrying across the deck. "All that sitting and grading papers. Tyler, you must feel incredible after a day of actual physical work. I bet you sleep like a rock, among other things." The double entendre was unmistakable, and I saw several guests exchange uncomfortable glances. My neighbor Janet found a sudden need to refill her drink, while my colleague Sarah busied herself helping other people with food. Tyler looked mortified. Samantha, maybe you should have some water, he suggested gently, but she laughed like he'd made a brilliant joke. I'm fine. Better than fine. I'm having the best time talking to someone who actually understands ambition. The party limped along for another hour, but the damage was done. Guests began making polite excuses to leave early, thanking us with strained smiles that didn't hide their discomfort. Tyler was among the first to go, giving me a meaningful look as he said goodbye. Call me tomorrow, man. We should talk. After the last guest left and we'd cleaned up in uncomfortable silence, I finally confronted her. Samantha, what the hell was that tonight? She was loading glasses into the dishwasher with exaggerated care, the way drunk people do when they're trying to prove they're not drunk. What was what? I thought it went great. Everyone seemed to have fun. Everyone left early because you spent the entire evening throwing yourself at Tyler. Throwing myself? She turned to face me, wine making her movements loose and uncoordinated. I was being friendly to our guest. I was showing interest in his work. God forbid someone in this house appreciates success when they see it. Appreciates success? You were practically sitting in his lap. Maybe I was appreciating what a real man looks like when he's not hiding behind a stack of history textbooks. The venom in her voice was startling. This wasn't wine talking, this was something she'd been thinking for a while. Tyler's building something meaningful with his life. He's taking risks, making real money, creating something that matters. Meanwhile, you're teaching the same lessons you taught last year to kids who couldn't care less. Each word hit like a physical blow. And what about our sex life, Connor? When's the last time you showed any real passion? Any drive? Tyler's probably incredible in bed because he actually has fire in him, actual ambition, actual. Stop. I held up my hand, but she was beyond stopping. You want to know the truth? Fine. Here's the truth. She swayed slightly, pointing an unsteady finger at my chest. I watch Tyler walk into a room and command respect. I watch him make decisions that change people's lives. I watch him build things with his actual hands while you grade papers about things that happened 150 years ago. Samantha, you're drunk. We should talk about this tomorrow. No, we should talk about this right now because I can't pretend anymore. Her voice cracked, but not with emotion, with frustration, like she'd been holding back these thoughts for months. I look at Tyler and I see everything you're not. I see passion and strength and the kind of man who doesn't just accept whatever life hands him. She took a step closer, her eyes focusing with sudden clarity despite the alcohol. Why did I settle for you when I could have someone like Tyler? The question hung between us like a physical presence, sucking all the air out of the room. Not, why do I love you, or what are we doing wrong? Why did I settle? Like our 3 years together, our engagement, our planned future was just some consolation prize she'd accepted while waiting for something better to come along. The word, settle, echoed in my mind as I stared at this woman I'd been planning to marry, realizing that she'd just answered every question I'd been afraid to ask. I reached for her left hand without saying a word, gently but firmly sliding my grandmother's engagement ring off her finger. The antique gold felt heavier than I remembered as I slipped it into my pocket. Connor, what are you doing? Panic crept into her voice as the alcohol haze cleared enough for her to understand what was happening. The engagement's over. My voice sounded calmer than I felt, like I was announcing a change in lesson plans rather than ending our entire future. You just told me you settled for me. Well, now you don't have to settle anymore. I didn't mean it like that. I was drunk, I was upset about work. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. You meant every word. And honestly, I'm grateful you finally said it out loud instead of making me guess why I never felt good enough. She tried everything over the next 20 minutes, tears, promises to change, claims that she was just testing my commitment, explanations about temporary insecurity. But I kept hearing that question, why did I settle for you? No amount of backtracking could erase the clarity in her voice when she'd asked it. I'm going to call Tyler, I said, pulling out my phone. Connor, please don't involve him in this. This is between us. You involved him the moment you decided he was everything I wasn't. I stepped outside to make the call, expecting awkwardness, maybe even anger that I was dragging him into our drama. Instead, Tyler answered with immediate concern. "Connor? Everything okay, man? You sound—" "Samantha and I just broke up. I need you to know it had nothing to do with you, but she said some things tonight about—" "Oh, thank God." The relief in his voice stopped me cold. "I mean, I'm sorry you're going through this, but Connor, she's been making me incredibly uncomfortable for weeks. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without blowing up your relationship." "What kind of uncomfortable?" "Texts at weird hours asking for advice about things that had nothing to do with construction. Comments about my workout routine. Last week she asked if I was seeing anyone because some women appreciate ambitious men more than others." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I hoped she'd back off and because—" He paused. "Because I was worried you'd think I was trying to cause problems." "But Connor, tonight at the party, the way she was acting? That was beyond inappropriate. I felt like I needed a shower after every conversation." By the time I hung up, I felt something unexpected, relief. Not devastation, not anger, but genuine relief that Tyler's loyalty was never in question and that Samantha had revealed her true character before I'd legally bound myself to her. The next morning, I called in sick to school and started packing. Samantha had apparently spent the night at her friend Ashley's place, which gave me time to collect my essential belongings without drama. Tyler showed up with his truck before I'd even finished loading boxes. "You sure about this?" he asked, carrying my books to the vehicle. "After last night? I've never been more sure of anything." "But because she called me twice this morning trying to get me to convince you to reconsider. Told her that wasn't happening." We loaded everything into his guest room in 2 trips, and I felt lighter with each box I carried out. That afternoon, Samantha began her campaign to win me back, starting with a series of increasingly desperate text messages. "Connor, I made a terrible mistake. Please come home so we can talk. I was drunk and scared about the wedding. I didn't mean any of it. You're throwing away 3 years over one stupid comment." Then she escalated to showing up at Franklin County High, waiting by my classroom door between periods with red-rimmed eyes and a coffee from my favorite shop. "Connor, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "There's nothing to discuss, Samantha. You made your feelings clear. I was testing your commitment. I wanted to see if you'd fight for us." The lie was so transparent it was almost insulting. You weren't testing anything. You were being honest for the first time in months. Meanwhile, Tyler was handling her attempts to contact him with impressive directness. When she approached him at Murphy's Tavern Thursday night, trying to convince him to mediate, he shut her down publicly enough that the entire bar heard his response. "Samantha, what you did to Connor was shameful. I'm not interested in discussing it, and I'm not interested in any kind of relationship with someone who would treat my best friend like garbage." Word traveled fast in our small town, and Tyler's public rejection of her advances became part of the story everyone was telling. Within a week, I'd found a small apartment near the school, declined Samantha's offers to work things out, and started sleeping through the night for the first time in months. The devastating realization wasn't that she'd chosen Tyler over me, it was that she'd never really chosen me at all. I'd just been the safe option until something more exciting came along, and discovering that before the wedding was the luckiest break of my life. Small towns are unforgiving when it comes to social scandals, and Samantha's behavior at our barbecue had provided enough material to fuel conversations for months. By the following weekend, everyone seemed to know that Connor Mitchell's engagement had ended spectacularly, with details growing more dramatic with each retelling. I heard she was practically climbing all over that construction fellow right in front of Connor, Mrs. Henderson whispered to her friend at the grocery store, loud enough for half the produce section to overhear. Poor boy just stood there watching his fiancée make a fool of herself. The story evolved as it spread, but the core remained consistent. Samantha had publicly humiliated herself and me in pursuit of my best friend, destroying a 3-year relationship for a fantasy that Tyler had never encouraged. What transformed local gossip into genuine social consequences was Samantha's decision to confront Tyler at Murphy's Tavern the following Friday night. I wasn't there, but 3 different people called to tell me what happened, and someone's cell phone video made its way around social media within hours. Apparently, she'd been drinking heavily before approaching Tyler's table where he was having dinner with potential clients. "You can't just ignore me forever," she'd slurred, swaying as she gripped his chair. "I know you felt something at that party. I saw how you looked at me." Tyler had remained calm but firm. "Samantha, you need to leave. I'm having a business dinner." "Business, right? Everything's about business with you successful men." Her voice was getting louder, drawing attention from other diners. "Well, I'm successful too. I manage an entire bank branch, and I know quality when I see it." "The quality you should have recognized was Connor, who deserved better than what you gave him." That's when she completely lost it, according to witnesses. She started crying and yelling about how everyone was taking Connor's side without understanding her perspective, how Tyler was being cruel by pretending he wasn't attracted to her, how small-town people couldn't understand ambitious women. Tyler had to ask the manager to escort her out while his clients sat in stunned silence. The video showed her stumbling toward the exit while shouting back at Tyler's table, "You'll regret this when I'm married to someone who actually appreciates me." The professional consequences came swiftly. Franklin County is small enough that personal reputation directly impacts business reputation, and First National Bank received multiple complaints from customers who'd heard about Samantha's public behavior. Mrs. Patterson, my former English teacher who banked there, mentioned to the branch president that Samantha's personal conduct was reflecting poorly on the institution. "People are talking," she'd apparently said during a routine visit. "And not in ways that inspire confidence in professional judgment." Regional manager Tom Bradley called Samantha in for what became known around town as a very serious conversation about maintaining the bank's community standing. Word leaked that she'd been warned about keeping her personal life from affecting her professional relationships, a humiliation that sent her into another spiral of public self-defense. The final nail in her social coffin came at the annual United Way charity auction 3 weeks later. Tyler had donated construction services for a local family's porch renovation, and when his lot came up for bidding, Samantha made a scene that cemented her reputation as the town's cautionary tale. She'd been drinking again, apparently her new normal, and when Tyler took the stage to describe his donation, she called out from the crowd, "Make sure everyone knows what kind of man they're supporting." The auction hall went silent as Tyler looked directly at her. "You're right, Samantha. People should know exactly what kind of man I am." His voice carried clearly through the microphone. "I'm the kind of man who would never betray his best friend. I'm the kind of man who finds your behavior toward Connor shameful and disgusting. And I'm the kind of man who wants nothing to do with someone who would destroy a good relationship because she thought she could trade up." The applause that followed was spontaneous and thunderous, while Samantha fled the building in tears. From that point forward, her social isolation became complete. Women who'd been friendly acquaintances began avoiding her at local establishments, unwilling to associate with someone who'd so publicly betrayed a well-liked man for selfish reasons. Men viewed her with suspicion, recognizing her as the type of woman who'd abandon a loyal partner the moment someone with more money appeared. Her Friday nights, once filled with social gatherings, devolved into solo drinking sessions at different bars where she'd corner anyone willing to listen to her version of events. "Connor was holding me back," she'd insist to strangers. "Tyler led me on and then humiliated me. This whole town is full of small-minded people who can't handle a woman with ambition." But each attempt to defend herself only reinforced people's negative opinions, especially when she started bad-mouthing both Tyler and me to anyone who'd listen. Her social media presence became increasingly desperate and vindictive, with posts about fake friends who show their true colors and small towns that punish women for knowing their worth. The indirect references were transparent enough that mutual acquaintances began unfollowing her to avoid the drama. "She's become everything people warned us about," Ashley, her former best friend, mentioned to someone who mentioned it to me. Bitter, desperate, and completely unwilling to take responsibility for her own choices. Within 2 months, Samantha had transformed from a respected bank manager engaged to a popular teacher into the town's prime example of how self-destruction looks when wrapped in entitlement and poor judgment. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my small apartment grading midterm exams when Tyler knocks on my door with takeout from Chang's Garden and 2 cold beers, our new Thursday night tradition that's become as reliable as sunrise. How'd the parent conferences go? He asks, settling into the chair I bought specifically because it's comfortable enough for long conversations but not so comfortable that guests overstay their welcome. Better than expected. Mrs. Chen thanked me for helping her son understand the Civil War wasn't just about dates and battles. Apparently, he's been telling everyone at dinner about economic factors and states' rights. Tyler grins, popping open his beer. See? You're actually changing lives, man. Some of us just build pretty houses. The easy camaraderie between us has deepened into something more like brotherhood, forged through shared crisis and mutual respect. Tyler's loyalty during the whole Samantha disaster proved what real friendship looks like. Not just someone who shows up for good times, but someone who chooses your side when choosing sides matters. Speaking of pretty houses, I say, how's the Morrison project coming along? Finished ahead of schedule and under budget. They're so happy they're recommending me to 3 other families in Riverside. Tyler's business has exploded beyond even his optimistic projections, but success hasn't changed his fundamental character. He still shows up with Chinese food, still asks about my students, still treats our friendship like the valuable thing it is. And speaking of recommendations, he continues with a smile that suggests he's been waiting to share news. I asked Rebecca to dinner tomorrow night. Rebecca Martinez teaches 4th grade at Franklin Elementary, and she's exactly the kind of woman Tyler deserves: intelligent, kind, genuinely impressed by character rather than bank accounts. They met at a teacher appreciation event I dragged him to, and I watched her light up when he asked thoughtful questions about educational challenges instead of trying to impress her with business stories. About time, I say, raising my beer in a mock toast. She's been asking about you for weeks. The update I've been expecting but dreading comes during our second beer. Mike Henderson mentioned he saw Samantha's car at her parents' place last weekend, Tyler says carefully. Apparently, she's been staying there since she lost her job? I finish. The news had reached me through the teacher grapevine. Regional Manager Bradley had finally decided that Samantha's increasingly erratic behavior and reputation issues were incompatible with representing First National's community values. Mike said she looked rough. Really rough. Tyler's voice carries genuine sympathy despite everything that happened. Her mom told Mrs. Patterson that Samantha's been struggling with depression and drinking. I feel something that surprises me, actual concern for her well-being, separate from any lingering romantic feelings. I hope she gets help, I say and mean it. She clearly needed something I couldn't give her, but that doesn't mean I wanted her life to fall apart. That's what makes you a good man, Connor. Most people would be celebrating her downfall. Celebrating someone else's pain doesn't make mine go away. Besides, I pause, considering how to articulate something I've been thinking about for months. She actually did me the biggest favor possible by showing me who she really was before we got married. Tyler nods thoughtfully. Better to find out during an engagement than during a divorce. The conversation turns to lighter topics. Tyler's latest project involving a historic home renovation, my plans for spring break, the baseball season that's starting to feel promising for our Tennessee team. But later, after he's gone and I'm preparing lessons for tomorrow, I find myself reflecting on how dramatically my life has improved since that devastating night 6 months ago. My small apartment feels more like home than the place I shared with Samantha ever did. No more walking on eggshells around someone's mood swings. No more feeling inadequate for choosing stable work over flashy entrepreneurship. No more pretending that constant criticism was somehow motivating rather than soul-crushing. I've started dating again, cautiously but with clearer priorities. Jessica, the new librarian, shares my love of historical fiction and treats my job like it matters rather than like it's something to apologize for. Angela from the neighboring high school appreciates quiet dinners and long conversations about books, education, and building meaningful lives rather than impressive lifestyles. Neither relationship has developed into anything serious yet, but both women make me feel valued for who I am rather than tolerated until something better comes along. The contrast with Samantha is stark and enlightening. These women ask about my students, remember details about my work challenges, and seem genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions. When Jessica brings coffee to school committee meetings, it's because she wants to support my work, not because she's networking for personal advantage. When Angela suggests weekend activities, they're things we'd both enjoy rather than opportunities for her to be seen with someone. You seem different, my colleague Sarah mentioned during lunch duty last week. More relaxed, more yourself. She's right. Without constant pressure to prove my worth or justify my choices, I've rediscovered aspects of my personality that had been buried under years of feeling insufficient. I make jokes again, pursue hobbies I'd abandoned, even started writing lesson plans that incorporate creative projects rather than just textbook assignments. My students have noticed the change too. Several have commented that history class has become more interesting, more engaging, more fun. Perhaps most importantly, I've learned to recognize the difference between someone who loves you and someone who settles for you while waiting for an upgrade. Samantha's question, "Why did I settle for you?" haunts me not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. She had settled, and in doing so, she'd made me feel like I was worth settling for rather than worth choosing. The right person won't ask why they settled. They'll know exactly why they chose you and feel grateful for the choice every day. Tyler's voice carries through my window as he talks on his phone in the parking lot, probably coordinating tomorrow's job site or talking to Rebecca about their dinner plans. The sound reminds me that some people do choose loyalty, do value character, do build relationships based on mutual respect rather than opportunistic calculation. 6 months ago, I thought my life was ending when Samantha asked that devastating question. Now I realize it was actually beginning, the real version, built on authentic connections with people who see my worth rather than my limitations. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals turn out to be the greatest gifts, saving you from a lifetime of being undervalued by someone who never deserved your love in the first place. Samantha did me a favor by showing her true colors before I legally bound myself to someone who would have spent our entire marriage looking for something better. And Tyler did me a favor by proving that real friends don't disappear when choosing sides becomes necessary. As I finish grading the last essay about the causes of the Civil War, I smile at the irony that my own personal war ended not with victory or defeat, but with the recognition that I'd been fighting the wrong battle all along. The goal was never to convince someone to value me, it was to find someone who already did.